Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fridays with Fawn. My name is Fawn Lopez. I'm your host, and I'm the publisher of Modern Healthcare. Joining me today is Sherrie Barch, CEO of Furst Group, a top 10 executive search firm as ranked by Modern Healthcare, and one of America's best executive search firms by Forbes. Welcome, Sherrie, and
Thank
I'm
you.
delighted to have you as my guest today.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you so much. So, Sherrie, you've had a distinguished career. You co-founded Furst Group 30 years ago and now CEO of the group. And by the way, may I be a little personal with you?
Sure.
You must have started when you were 10 years old.
Oh,
You look
the filters work well in this COVID environment, Fawn.
Oh, that's great. So,
Thank you.
Furst Group is a search firm, and you've been there 30 years. What I'd love to do is to have you start by talking a bit about your career journey, especially your journey to become CEO of Furst Group. What were some of the ups and downs, sideways challenges that you have faced during your 30 years?
I think this past year has probably been one of the largest, just, reinventing how we're doing search and making sure all of our employees and executives were safe. But boy, if I back up 30, I think I'm in my 33rd year. So if we back up to when I first started and try to go through this quickly, I came out of grad school and knew I wanted to work with people, and I was always very curious about people's stories. And I ended up taking this role as a research associate inside of this search firm, which at the time is a different organization than this, but we purchased it 4 years later. Still Furst Group, but a different owner. And what I found is I was really hired because of my journalism minor. And again, that way of being curious and trying to understand people and being a very strong listener, I think are all the pieces that make a strong recruiter and help executives find their next position and clients find the right executives. But back then, there were no female vice presidents. There was no one else at the table except men. And even in healthcare at that time, a lot of the hospital administrators and a lot of the managed healthcare plans that we worked with were male. But what I did is as a research associate, I started to build my knowledge, and I had an expertise in physician leadership, physician executive. But at that time, when that first decade of my career started to change from that figurehead MD to really physician leaders and making a difference in the quality of care, in the institution's quality, and the bottom line. So once I started to gain more knowledge, I started to come to the table. And now I was able to use that knowledge, use that insight, and help our clients find better executives. So I really think it was not letting any of the barriers of not seeing someone like me at the table, but instead learning the knowledge, applying it, and being able to create value for the consumer, the people that were going to hire us.
So you talked a bit about curiosity. I think it's one of the most important traits in any position, right? In any leader, but especially in salespeople. And so, and you also talk about knowledge. I can remember when I first started at Modern Healthcare, I didn't know anything about healthcare. And so the first thing I did was to learn all I could about the industry. And I was in a great position because I had a whole entire staff of industry experts to learn from.
Yes.
And that was exactly what I had to do. And just embrace learning and get as much knowledge, gain as much knowledge as you can when you're starting a new position, and especially in a new industry.
Yes.
So were there any pivotal moments that changed the trajectory of your career, Sherrie?
I think the biggest one, it's kind of a funny story now, but I nominated myself to the board. I
Good
was,
for you.
I know, I was in a board meeting, and I was, again, because of my knowledge, was invited to a board meeting, and I think I was dangerous and knew enough about, being able to at least nominate for discussion. And all I needed was a second. And a gentleman in our Minneapolis office at the time seconded it. And I was able to talk about why I thought it was strong for the organization to have me on the board. And I actually then was on the board. So that's what started a lot of my career journey. I think about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, I really saw a need for development and development of executives. And even though you would think it's counterintuitive for a search executive to say, hang on a second, let's develop your internal people, that's really where you start to find the talent that might be diverse or might be female, that isn't necessarily coming through traditional routes. And so that started NuBrick Partners, which is our leadership consulting arm. Actually, it's not an arm, it's a whole being now. It's grown tremendously, and they're doing phenomenally well. So that was a pivot point for me, because I really wanted to look at a different way of delivering value to our clients, not just through the search product, but also through that leadership development. And then right as NuBrick was going to launch under that brand, I have 3 sons, and 2 of my sons were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes within the same year.
Wow.
And what that did for me as a female executive, as a mom, is really pivot again and think about, how am I going to continue to deliver what I love to do and my passion in both of these organizations, and at the same time make sure that my children are cared for and are healthy and are safe. And so I had to become a delegator, and I had to move from maybe that entrepreneurial individual contributor to a true leader that can delegate, that can set up tools for others to use, and create the pathways that allow them to be successful, and therefore the organizations to be successful.
Wow,
So
there's
that was
so much in that comment
there's
that
a
I want to dig
pivot.
into. Wow, that's so great. First is nominating yourself to have a seat at the table in the boardroom it's pretty courageous. So
Yeah,
good for you.
or naive.
How young were you at the time?
I was probably in my early 30s.
Wow. Good for you. What courage.
Or late 20s, maybe. Yeah, I didn't know any better. I didn't see any barriers. I just knew I wanted to help. I knew I could add value. And of course, I wanted to talk about it and be at that table.
That's what we want women to that kind of thinking is what we want women to have, right?
Yes.
Because you have a lot to bring to the table.
Yes.
And let's make sure people know about it. So, and thank you for sharing your story about your sons.
Yes.
I'm sure that resonates really with our audience, because as we all struggle to find a balance and to balance work life, thank you for sharing and the tips that you shared. So
yes, and I think the team around me was incredibly supportive. They allowed me to use my talents and skills in different ways. And I think in the end, and I look back on COVID and everything that we put in place, not that I don't always want pivots to be that hard, but you know what? If I look back, it was actually a very healthy thing to do for the organization.
Yeah. So we just talked a little bit about Furst, which is an executive search firm. And the firm focuses exclusively on the healthcare industry. Would you be willing to share your perspective on the overall industry trends that have impacted the executive search process over the years?
Sure. I think one of the biggest is consumerism. If you think about what healthcare used to be, and how it's certainly still regulated, but access to it has changed so much. Mm-hmm. If you think about all the different ways in which we as consumers can select and care and create our own plans and our own the owners of our own health. So I think that consumerism is where we're starting to see opportunities to do different kinds of searches. So you've got strategy managers, brand managers, even the roles that might have the same titles like chief medical officer, they look different today than they did in my first decade of search. I think another trend is healthcare entities are looking outside of healthcare for talent. Yeah. They're looking for experiences that are trained in different ways in different industries and bringing that training into healthcare, whether it's Six Sigma or whether it's hospitality industry and how our patient experience is at our organization. I also think there's been a shift in the access to candidates. So our clients through LinkedIn and through social media and through connectivity have no longer maybe the need for a search firm to come in and say, hey, I've got all this network and this access. But I think where we have been able to provide even more value is with NuBrick Partners helping us assess candidates, attract candidates, back to your sales comment, but also make sure that there's a level of understanding of missions and passion that come through that assessment process, whether it's formal, like through a Hogan assessment, or even informal, but just the ability to understand the fit of that candidate. So those are just off the top of my head some things I think about that have really changed how executive search has been influenced in that healthcare marketplace.
Thank you. That's really some very good thinking there. Very helpful. What are the current trends that you're seeing? How have they impacted searches for women and minorities in leadership, especially since the pandemic and the heightened focus on racial inequities in healthcare and in America?
Yes.
What has been the impact of the DEI movement on the search business?
I think the biggest thing is we have clients that are not going to accept, double negative here, non-diverse slates. So it is not acceptable if you are not able to put diversity on the candidate slate. I love it. I love it.
Absolutely.
And it's just an entry point to say, and that's part of the reason why they're hiring us, is to say, this is important to this organization. We're going to invest in your services, and we want to make sure that slate is representative of the organization that we either are today or want to be.
And I also think that across the board?
Yes, absolutely. It's even, they're written into contracts, and, what does that mean? We're asked a lot about our diversity involvement, and I know we'll hopefully be able to talk about that in our long partnership with you and Modern Healthcare. But I think there's a war on talent, and I think one of the things that we're trying to do is work with clients to understand, and candidates as well. On the client side, it's really looking at a continuum of years of experience, degrees and where they're from, or level of education. Sometimes we've got some institutional biases that are in there, and it's not necessarily biases about minorities or women, but it's biases about what kind of background is needed for a particular role. So we try to work through that, talk about competencies and skill sets and talents and what that might look like. Part of that's coming from out of industry competition and out of industry needs. So it's really opened up the conversation to be less traditional in how we're attracting candidates. I think the other piece that's really important for our clients is to be open to look at number twos. So is there an opportunity to ascend into the role versus a lateral or somebody that's already proven? Yeah. So then on the candidate side, it's helping the candidates build out that trajectory. What does that vision look like? What have you done currently at a size and scope that might be smaller, but the competence is proven? And with the help of the institution, with the help of mentoring, or with just an opportunity to have a larger platform, this candidate will be successful. So
yeah, I have a
readiness conversation.
Sure. I have a question about that in a few minutes. But so in your role as CEO of Furst Group. You've had hands-on experience in helping boards and CEOs recruit, develop, and retain leaders. And I'm told you've placed over 50,000 positions.
Oh, no. Just I've had conversations or interacted with that many. Oh, I wish. No, not even close.
I was like, oh my gosh.
No.
I wanted to make sure I understood that.
No. I've met everyone in the world at least once. No, I'm just kidding.
So what would your advice be for women and minorities who are preparing for their next step into an executive position?
I'll go back to that, create that trajectory, create that clarity around, and when I say your story, I don't mean it's made up, but can you clearly articulate what you do well, what you're passionate about, and what you want to do? So that, and I also think we put our own barriers in place.
Yeah.
So I think I would just, not put those barriers there. Lean in, be curious, look around. I'd probably take note of the organizations, look around. Are they representing what you want? Are they, who's at the table?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the table doesn't have people like you at the table, ask why. So my advice is lean into what you're seeing, be curious, ask questions, don't put your own barriers up. Because I think as a candidate, especially today, you can create your own opportunities and not necessarily that interviewer. Sometimes the interviewer needs help.
True. Great tips.
Thank you.
And also, as you are engaged in a lot of the searches that are happening at Furst Group, can you share with us your tips on how you search for leaders? Are there patterns that you look for that you can spot as far as leadership styles, future success indicators, etc.?
Yeah, that's I think there's something to be said about the clarity of their ability to communicate. And I also think there's a term I've been using, it's called confident humility. And if I think about a lot of the leaders that have received the top 25 awards, both from women and minorities, you'll see that there's a confidence there, but there's also the ability to make room for other people to be successful. And I think watching a leader understand that role and their legacy to be able to create success around them and share the spotlight, leave oxygen in the room for others, those are going to be really important, subjective, maybe not formal skills that we try to look for. And how many times the leader says I in an interview versus we or they. And then I think formally, leadership across different industries, different organizations are going to look different depending on the season of the organization, what needs to be accomplished. So you have to stay fluid in that definition and unbiased.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I think as an executive search consultant, I can't come in and have one vision of what a leader is and what they should be. I need to be curious with my client. I need to understand their journey, where they're at, what they need, what they've had as far as past leadership. And then when we go into the market to assess leaders, we're taking all those pieces and trying to understand the competencies, the talents, and that candidate's trajectory. And sometimes it's completely out of industry. Like a hospital who wanted to bring a casino support person into their hospital. So you have to look for those pillars and those the abilities of the candidates and the client's ability to make that candidate successful. It's really phenomenally interesting. I'm having a great time.
Love it. Love it. So Furst Group was the original and exclusive sponsor of Modern Healthcare's Women Leaders in Healthcare Conference, our top 25 women leaders in healthcare, and the top 25 diversity leaders. And you have remained a partner ever since. It's been from the inception of these programs. What made you want to initially partner with us, and what has been the value provided that has kept you as a partner?
My partner, Bob Clark, and I realized that there was a lot of untapped talent in the healthcare industry. And it was more around succession planning, being able to evaluate internal teams, or just certain ways in which search was conducted that was excluding the opportunity for others in those minority areas or women to apply to be considered. Mm-hmm. And so, Fawn, you were so passionate and dedicated to women leadership that we knew we needed to be part of this movement that you created. And that was really the Women's Conference. And what I always loved about the Women's Conference is it wasn't all about, well, as a woman, here's how to be a leader. As a woman, here's how to be an effective communicator. It was, as a leader, here's how to do these things. And it was refreshing. It continues to become even more and more valuable with all the different perspectives and diversity that you're able to attract on the Women's Conference. And the top 25 women and the top 25 top minority leaders really is just continuing that effort. It's showcasing the talent. So as a healthcare marketplace, they can see where there is talent and where there is opportunities to increase their organization's success. Then we also did the up-and-comers, and we did some of the more senior healthcare leaders that can do some mentoring and help lead some of the younger generations. So it's just been a continuum of great progress. We've seen great success, and we are very, very proud in this day and age and everything that's going on to be able to say that we've been here already. Welcome. And that has a lot to do with you, Fawn, Modern Healthcare, and your team. It's just been an amazing experience to work with you.
Well, it's been an amazing partnership, and our success is your success, and your success is ours. You've been there from the very start, and all of these programs have grown, which demonstrates the need for diversity and inclusion. Yes. And equity in healthcare. So we value your partnership, and thank you for that commitment to advancing diversity. So a last thought, comment. Do you have any final advice, comments for women and minorities looking for career advancement in healthcare?
I think I've touched a few of them. I think don't make your own barriers. There's plenty of them out there. So, at least take yours down. Go for it. If there's a stat that's out there, and I hear all different kinds of percentages, but, as it relates to looking at an opportunity, males will, if they're 60% qualified or 40% qualified, they'll go for it. Where women have a tendency to be a little bit more, to the letter of what the job description is saying. I say don't do that. Look at it. If it's a company that you like, if it's a position you're interested in, go interview for it. Even if it's not something that you end up getting, you're getting more and more experience and education about different opportunities that are available. Mm-hmm. I think also sometimes people think I have to leave my institution if I want to advance. And I think sometimes maybe the leaders around you need a little bit of help understanding what your own vision is. So be clear in that. Look at that trajectory. Talk about what you want to do. And it will help people around you promote you, support you, and be part of your career success.
Thank you. Thank you for those very important advice. So, Sherrie, it has been such a pleasure talking with you today. And again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share with us. And on behalf of our team at Modern Healthcare and our audience, thank you to you and to Furst Group for your continued partnership and support of our Modern Healthcare's efforts to advancing DE&I in healthcare.
Thank you for the opportunity, Fawn.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As always, I look forward to seeing you on the next Fridays with Fawn and hope that you'll join us at our virtual Women Leaders in Healthcare Conference this July 22nd and 23rd. Thank you.